Hello, Fundamentals of Management students. I am so happy to have an opportunity to present a mini presentation to you all specific to what's required for you to demonstrate mastery of the final assessment for this competency. Many of you are doing a good job, but there are a couple of areas that I am starting to see a trend form where students are struggling. And so this PowerPoint is purposed to help remedy those challenges. One of the key things that I need for each of you to do is to make sure you read your rubric from the beginning to the end. Every element of the rubric is vital, but there are three areas that I want to focus on as it relates to details and specifics, and then touch on the scoring portion of the rubric. If you follow the recommendations in this presentation, you will be successful in completing this competency. The rubric is extremely helpful in helping you to give direction as to what is required of you to demonstrate mastery. Also, and to give you insight into what you need to do as it relates to the type of research in order for you to demonstrate mastery. The very first section of your rubric is step one that I want to focus on, and that's just telling you one of the first things that you need to do in order to prepare to complete this assessment. The first task for you is to identify a company that you can relatively obtain easy information on easily. Make sure you're able to obtain information as it relates to the culture of the company and its structure. And we'll talk about org structure in a little bit more. And then also be able to talk about some of the challenges that exist within an organization and management functions. And you'll need to focus specifically on a job, a position that is associated with that company. Step two, what I want to draw your attention to on this particular slide is essentially just the different sections of the paper that you will need to have. And while title headings are not required any longer with APA 7th edition, I still strongly recommend that you use headings. You'll have a title page, and the title page is not included in your page count. You'll have a section that's titled Introduction or not. You don't necessarily need to title it Introduction, but you can if you just want to get yourself in a pattern where it becomes easier for you to use your headings. You'll have a body, and the body of the paper will include the business overview and summary, an integrated learning and application section, a recommendation section, and you will need a heading for each of those, and then you will have a conclusion and a reference list. Now, part three, here is really where I want to focus and parse apart what you will need to do in order to be successful on this assessment. So first, in the introduction, you're going to make sure that your introduction has a very clear purpose statement. What is the purpose of this paper that you are about to write? The introduction should explain what the main points are that you will analyze, and this is the first opportunity that you have to really provide some scholarly sources from outside of the curriculum. The curriculum is the foundational point within a competency for you to obtain your theories, your frameworks, and or practices. But I do want you to then take it a step further and go to some external sources to support the theories, frameworks, or competencies, the theories, frameworks, or practices that you're using in order to increase the scholarship of your paper. So within your introduction, you'll touch on the business overview, and we'll look at what's included in your business overview, the application of management practices, so you can identify here within this paper The following theories, frameworks, and/or practices will be analyzed. One will certainly be the four fundamental tasks of managers, and we'll look at that in a minute. You can talk about org structure, culture, and the like. For each one that you identify, make sure you provide a citation from an external source. And then, of course, you will conduct an analysis. So the introduction should give a quick overview of the 3 to 5 points of analysis that relate directly to the remainder of the paper. In this section, where this is where your citations will begin, make sure that you use external sources because that's definitely what I will look for, and it will help you really to analyze and apply the concepts to the job posting. Now here's the business overview, and you'll have a heading for business overview. Within the business overview, you're going to describe the organization and the job description that you chose. You'll explain how and why you selected this particular position and company. So all of this is just the initial information that's necessary to help your reader become a little bit more acquainted with the company and the position that you selected, and helping us to understand how and why you made the selection that you did. So this is just your initial research. You'll provide the following: history of the organization, and make sure that this level of detail is provided within your paper. Because if I'm unable to say yes to all of these elements, then I'm unable to pass the assessment, okay? So you'll talk about the timeline and the growth rate, the number of employees, and information like that to help me better understand the dynamics of this organization. You'll discuss the company type, and then within the rubric, you see this hyperlink for industry type. When you click on that link, it takes you to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it provides you with some additional information specific to the industry. I completely expect to see that some information from this source within the paper as it relates to the industry, and for it to be cited and cited properly. Also, you'll then provide the vision and mission of the organization. Now, in some instances, I have found that the company may have a vision and mission statement that is public facing, meaning the public is able to access it relatively easy. But then, depending upon the department or region that a student works in, what the vision and mission for them is slightly different, and it's not available to the public. If that's the case, provide the statement that is specific to your function, or to the role of this position rather, and then just state that it's not available to the public, the general public. That's all you need to do. So where the management job description fits in is also something that you would need to discuss. And here is where you can really tie in organizational theory and org structure. So when we talk about the position, what level of position is it within an organization? And so when you look at org structure, you can you identify what type of organization structure the company has according to organizational structure theory. You would cite it, then identify where this position falls within an organization, and then evaluate whether or not its effectiveness in that particular position as it relates to the org structure that the company is in pursuit of. Is there alignment there? Make that is one point of analysis, and I'm going to look to see if that exists. Okay. Also, the title and description of the position, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. If that exists, make sure that you include that as well. If it does not, state that the company doesn't have such a statement, but if they have something that is similar or serves the same purpose, provide that as well. And here is another opportunity for you to apply a concept in your paper. It's not required, but if you're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is probably linked to culture, or the culture of the organization and its values and what they're trying to achieve. If that's the case, discuss how and why these statements link to the culture of the organization, and how well it's achieving whatever the mission is, the vision is, the mission, the culture, and or the values of the company. So that's another opportunity for you to do some analysis. But the next section is truly where your application will come into play. And that's in the integrated learning and application section. So here is where you'll provide examples of the functions of management from the job. So we know the four fundamental tasks of a manager: to plan, organize, lead, and control. So you definitely want to list that and cite it. And make sure you use an external source. And now let's apply. And within this particular job description, what is an instance where they would need to demonstrate planning, when they would need to lead, when they would need to organize, when they would need to control. Let's make sure you pull examples from that job description to show when those particular functions are required within this particular job. And then connect one major management theory with the function to the job. And so it's up to you to select what managerial theory or management theory you would want to utilize depending upon the type of job. And here is another instance where you would identify that management theory and have a corresponding citation with it. Describe ways in which the job description aligns with the organization theory, mission, vision, and values. So make sure that you discuss that. And here again, when we talk about mission and vision and values, find an external source, cite it. Make sure you cite it, and make sure that you are able to demonstrate or describe how the job description aligns with it. Now, there are instances when a company has just done a really good job with tying in the mission, the vision, and values of the company within a job description. And if you find that that is the case, state it and provide examples as to how the company did a good job within that particular job description towards its mission, its vision, and its values. What are the examples that you can provide to demonstrate that? So if you can't find an opportunity, if there's no misalignment, if there's nothing missing, then tell us how the company satisfied that within the job description. Just give a single example and you're finished with that section as well. And then, of course, you'll discuss what managerial responsibilities support the organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. So you'll discuss that, when and where it exists. Be sure to answer the two questions. How will this position directly support the organization's strategy in the DEI initiative? And what are the ethical responsibilities of the manager as it relates to DE and I? Make sure that here is another opportunity for you to use a heading. Make sure you address these, because it's something that we're going to look for in order to evaluate whether or not you successfully demonstrated mastery of this particular component. So make sure that you allow yourself limit the opportunities that you have to miss something by just trying to combine it all. Separate it, use your headings, and make sure you address each of the questions and tasks presented to you within the rubric. Okay. And now we are on to the recommendation section. And here's where you'll have another heading for your recommendations. And here you'll discuss three most important management skills a top candidate for this position at this organization must possess. So you would identify what are those top skills. It could be even something as simple as, well, not as simple, but a conceptual skills, maybe a technical skill. Whatever the skills are that you think the top candidates would need to possess, identify them and then discuss why. Identify at least one challenge that a new hire will encounter upon starting this position. One of the challenges that a manager may have, especially in the times that we're in now, could be around organizing staff to do a particular, to perform certain functions, because it's difficult now for companies to get, to hire people, or for people to remain on the job or even return to the office. So if that's the case, discuss the dynamics around this particular position and what could be done to mitigate it. Then you'll provide recommendations for improving uh, this managerial job description based on the mission, vision, and values of the organization. And I touched on this in the previous slide as it relates to the integration and application. If you feel that the position did a very good job and demonstrating its mission, vision, and values, just provide examples of how it achieved that, and that's it. Don't worry yourself if you can't really find a misalignment or if nothing's missing from your perspective. Just provide an example to support your position. Then, in your conclusion, the conclusion of your paper should include a clear and concise recap of the integrated learning and application section. So here we're very specific in telling you exactly what we want to see in the conclusion. You're going to go right back to the learning and application section. The conclusion cannot, you can't bring anything new as it relates to any new ideas into the conclusion. If it's not discussed within a paper, now is not the time to introduce it. And does the conclusion connect with your introduction? Remember, in your introduction, you identified the theories and frameworks that you would utilize within this paper and how they would be applied as far as your analysis is concerned. You apply them within the integrated and application section, and now you're just pulling maybe 3 or 4 of those main points that you discussed in the learning and integration section, revisiting them in your conclusion. And the conclusion does not, the conclusion highlights the important connections between managerial theories and your recommendations. So if you are successful in touching on and pulling all of these elements together within your paper, you will do very well in this competency. The last thing then that I would like for you to do is to utilize your scoring rubric. At the very least, you want to start at the proficient column. For this, the purposes of this presentation, I only limit it to one criterion. But of course, when you look through this particular assessment, I believe there are 6 criteria. So what you'll do is just start at the very least at the proficient column. Read what's required in order to demonstrate proficiency for the introduction. It says it must be clear, accurate, and you must have a clear, accurate thesis, introduction statement. It cannot miss any important components, and the introduction is clear and coherent and evokes interest in the topic. If you can say yes to all of these elements, so can I. If you cannot, neither can I. If you've done all this and you're like, man, I think I did even better, let me go look at exemplary. It's highly effective thesis and introduction statement. The introduction is compelling and provides enough content to provide a framework for the flow of the organization of the rest of the paper. You were just really detailed, and so as you progress through the paper, it was just easy for you to go right back up to that introduction and pull in some points you identified, and then just elaborate on it in the section that it belongs to. Great. If you did not meet the proficient column and you find that you're in a developing, then you need to do what's necessary to be proficient. And that's exactly the way that I will utilize this scoring portion of the rubric to identify whether or not you met the requirements to demonstrate mastery. It has to be proficient or higher. And all of the elements identified in the rubric must be met in order for you to be successful. So, with that being said, I tried to not have a very long presentation. We're almost at 20 minutes. I hope that you find this presentation to be helpful and that you'll utilize it not just for this competency, but for all subsequent competencies that you're working in. Take care and wishing you all the very best.